For years, the tiny European nation of Malta had a unique citizenship program where you donate to them and pay fees totaling about $1 million. And in return, you and your entire family would get citizenship in about 18 months. It offered all the benefits of any other European citizenship. But recently, the European Union bit back, forcing Malta to end this program and canceling one of the most successful options that wealthy people had to get European Union citizenship. Today, we're going to walk through all the different alternatives if you want to get European citizenship. And even more importantly, I'm going to ask you a question that I want you to consider before you go out and spend money on any European residence or citizenship program. I'm Andrew Henderson. I wrote this now classic book called Nomad Capitalist. And before we get started, I have two simple requests. If you want to hear more about Europe, leave a comment below, type more Europe. If you think we talk too much about Europe and you want to hear about other places, type less Europe. We want to know what you'd like to hear more about. And if you're navigating this maze of trying to get residence and citizenship and asset protection and tax reduction all around the world and you're confused by the constant changes, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We've got an entire team that handles this for high net worth clients. We keep up with all the changes. We have more options than anybody else. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Now to Malta. It's the end of an era, not the end of the world. That's the message that we are saying here at Nomad Capitalist, because Malta was never our only option. We're going to go through all the different options that you have, and most of them we can help you with. The question I want you to ask yourself, though, is in light of what's happened, is Europe the place that you want to go? And I think people confuse plan A and plan B. Plan B is, I'm going to get a second passport. I'm probably not going to move to that country, but if I'm going to be a European Union member state citizen, I can travel pretty much anywhere in the world. I think people who are looking to renounce U.S. citizenship or think they may have to renounce their other Western passport in the future, let's say you think the UK is going to become draconian in the future, you want to get an equally good passport, that's a plan B. You're going to keep it in your back pocket. Plan A is you want to go and move to Malta or move to any other European Union member country. I think people don't realize Malta is one of the members of the European Union. And so if you can get an Irish passport through your ancestry, you're going to have all the benefits essentially that a Maltese citizen has, and you're going to do so at a much lower price. But the question to ask yourself is, are you doing this for love or are you doing this for ego? And I've worked in years past with clients where I felt like they wanted the top tier passport, not because it served any of their actual needs, but because, let's say they're an American, they were planning on giving up their citizenship, and they just couldn't handle having a lesser passport. I've got a whole portfolio of quote-unquote lesser passports, and I feel more free. I have 2 residence permits in European Union member states. I'm able to go to those countries and to the entire Schengen area whenever I want. And so are you going and getting that European Union residence or passport because it's something that actually solves your problems, or do you just think that's what you should have? And I think what a lot of people are going to be asking themselves now is the European Union, as they let all kinds of people come in with no money, where they make it harder for entrepreneurs? I don't have a dog in this fight. I see the value of having a European passport, particularly for families, particularly for U.S. citizenship renunciants. But if you're like me and you don't care about visiting the United States, maybe you just want to say, I'm going to go look at one of the other options Nomad Capitalist has. So let's go through the options in Europe now, if it's a place that you believe fits into your portfolio. The first thing you can do is you can simply move to Malta and you can be naturalized. Most people aren't going to do this, but it teaches an important lesson. Malta technically allows you to move there. They've got a great tax regime. You can pay very low taxes living there. After 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. But what we learn, because we actually do this stuff all the time at scale, is it takes about 18 years for the average person to be naturalized. So what it says on the tin, 5 years to apply, isn't always what works. If you want to move to Malta for the next 18 years and you don't need that citizenship until then, that is one option. Probably not one most people are going to take. Let's talk about other high-level options. What we call fast-track naturalization programs. This is generally for investors. And so these are cropping up all over the world. I was reading an article recently about the UAE and how some very big investors there have gotten citizenship over the years. We talked about Kevin O'Leary, for example. If you are a celebrity, if you're able to invest tens of millions of dollars, it's possible that the government of the UAE will be happy to grant you citizenship through these means. And so there's other countries in Europe that do that. For example, one that you might have seen in your online research is Austria. Austria might do a couple dozen of these, if that, every year, where if you have the right profile, if they like you, if you make donation to a certain cause, or if you make an investment in something that someone cares about, the right person could recommend you and you could go up the chain. Now, this is not the old get a Mexican passport by giving someone some cash in a bag. You know, it's technically not legal. No. We're talking about a fully legal fast-track naturalization process. Austria does not do very many of them. They are very particular about who they take. But if you're willing to donate several million euros, if you're willing to invest, 7, 8, 9, 10 million euros, depending on where that investment is, it all comes down to the political sensitivity. There could be an opportunity there. I know someone that I believe to be legit who had a program in Poland a number of years ago, back when the government said, hey, we have some businesses that are important to us. If people come in and save those businesses from going under, that could be of interest to us. We'll be happy to give you a passport. We came across a couple years ago a country in Central Europe. If you went and hired a bunch of people and invested a couple $1 million in green energy specifically, yeah, our government will be interested, and maybe the minister of such and such will recommend you, and there's a legal process by which they recommend you, the president signs, the prime minister signs. There are programs like that. So if you're making substantial investments or you'd like to make a donation to a country outside of Malta, there are a handful of countries like that. You want to make sure you're doing it according to a legal framework that is actually written. It's not about knowing a guy who puts you in the system. It's about the right person can actually issue you that passport. It could be the president, the prime minister. In some cases, it's the parliament. So that option is not going to be instant, but it's going to take maybe a little bit longer than Malta's program. Could take you somewhere between a year and 2 years, depending on what you're doing. If you want to invest a lot less money and you're willing to wait a little bit longer and have residence privileges in Europe and then work towards citizenship, well, that's where a golden visa comes in. Now, we've seen a lot of change in the golden visa landscape recently, which also feeds into the, do I want to go to Europe, given how they continually across the European Union seem not to want to have wealth. So Spain got rid of their golden visa. Ireland got rid of their golden visa. They're not part of the Schengen area. Here's who has one left, and here's some of the options. Greece, for example, 250,000 up to 800,000 euros. Those are the investments. You get a 5-year residence permit, and you can renew that. Here's the plan B. You don't have to live in Greece, but you have the ability to go there whenever you want. Greece has a lump sum tax regime that you can take advantage of for many years if you want to have a very low amount of fixed tax. So even though Greece's taxes are very high, you can benefit from a low tax regime if you move there, but you don't have to move there. There are properties that you can buy. Now, you can't put them on Airbnb, but you can buy property. You can put money to bank. So it's a pretty straightforward residence program. They've raised the prices over the years. What we've seen, not from our own cases, but from just studying other cases, Greece is far less interested in naturalizing you as a citizen unless you are of Greek origin. Not to say that they never naturalize anyone who's not of Greek origin. We've always viewed the Greek golden visa as more of a residence permit that as long as you keep that investment, again, even as simple as keeping some money in the bank, that's not such a bad thing to do if you have liquidity somewhere else, move to Greece, but unlikely, in my personal opinion, for you to turn that into citizenship. Now, if you are of Greek origin, you can simply apply for Greek citizenship by descent in many cases. We'll come back to that in a minute. But what's written on the tin about applying for citizenship? You have to understand what's really happening behind the scenes. Portugal, a program where we believe, and we've seen some indications that people are more likely to get citizenship, same situation. You don't have to spend much time in Portugal. There's talk that they might raise that. There were some recent elections in Portugal. But what it's been for a long time is basically you spend 7 days per year on average in Portugal. So that's essentially a vacation. Both of these programs, again, if you want to move to that country, if you're like, hey, I hate the politics of my country, I got to get the heck out of here. Portugal, I like their policies. I like the living there. It seems like a better place to be. You can go and live there as long as you want. If you want to use that to travel a bit more easily throughout Europe's borderless Schengen area, you can, but you don't have to. The difference between Portugal is you can actually work towards citizenship if you learn the language, or we have a school you can go to that we work with here where you can avoid taking a language test if you go to the school. And so Portugal is one, generally you're going to be investing €500,000 or more. If you want the more flexible options that their golden visa allows, you can put it as little as €250,000. I would argue most folks want to be at that higher level, so it's a bit more expensive than Greece. You cannot invest in real estate unlike in Greece, so those are the two downsides, but you do have that more clear pathway to citizenship. And you can invest in things like funds, for example, funds that own shares in different companies or do different things. Italy has different residence permits, and Italy is working on shortening the period of time in which you can apply for citizenship. Italy is also making it harder to get citizenship by descent, so potential mixed messages there. Again, do you want to go and be in a place where there are mixed messages? You can simply show them income of about €31,000 a year. You can get a 1-year residence permit, but you can't be gone for more than 6 months. A lot of countries in Europe have that. If you want to actually move there, you may not even need a golden visa in some of these countries. But if you want that flexibility of not having to be there, that's where the golden visa comes in. So Italy does not have a real estate option in its golden visa. You can invest as little as 250,000 euros all the way up to 2 million euros. You're going to be more on the high end for the options that I think people like in Italy. It's never been the most competitive golden visa. Malta has its own residence program where you're going to put out a low six-figure sum in exchange for the ability to live in Malta. And again, if you want to just live in Malta, sometimes people think they need a citizenship when all they need is a residence permit. I'm going to come to that here in a minute. Some interesting permutations that you can use. But if you want to be a permanent resident of Malta, you're going to make a low six-figure donation as opposed to a close to seven-figure donation for the residence rights. You can move there and dramatically lower your taxes, but you're going to have to wait potentially 18 years in order to get citizenship there. Hungary also has a guest investor visa. I do have questions about Hungary naturalizing certain people as well. They have at times been difficult on language tests, even for people who have Hungarian ancestry, but their program is as little as 250,000 euros. If you were to get Hungarian citizenship and you are an American or you're someone else who wants to get access to the US, only native-born Hungarians whose place of birth is listed as Hungary in their passport can avail of ESTA to go to the United States. So anyone who's born anywhere else, including 1 mile over the border in Serbia to Hungarian parents, you will need to get a US visa at an embassy. So Malta, Italy, Portugal, Greece, if you had their citizenship, you would all have easier access to the United States. So those are some options. Again, Spain, Luxembourg also, the Netherlands, they closed down their golden visa options. You're seeing investors are less and less welcome in the European Union. We'll see how Portugal's going to go, but if you want to take advantage of that Portugal golden visa, I would do it now. Other options, citizenship by descent. Do you have ancestry? Parents or grandparents are the big ones. Italy recently closed off some of the later generation eligibility for citizenship by descent. It used to be you could go back into the mid-1800s if you had an ancestor from Italy, as long as there was an unbroken chain. Now they're not going to be as flexible anymore. Ireland, you can generally go back 2 generations. You can be Irish. If you have Irish ancestry in your grandparents, go and get that. We're seeing a huge surge in, particularly from Americans, applications for Irish naturalization for people who live there, as well as for people who have ancestry. Most countries in Europe have some sort of citizenship by descent. Countries like Norway, other Scandinavian countries, generally only your parents. But you've seen Poland, Slovakia, others in that region, they will oftentimes let you go back to great-grandparents or even an extra generation beyond that. Lithuania, another one. There are certain conditions. Again, when did your ancestors leave? Did the country exist when they left? This is the one a la carte product we offer here is citizenship by descent. I think we generally get the more difficult cases. People have trouble. We help people tracking down their paperwork in town halls across Europe. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply if you want help with that. But citizenship by descent, if it's a highly affordable way to get the same quality passport that Malta has, if you're lucky enough to have that bloodline. But if you do, you want to move quickly. On all these things, particularly in Europe, the lesson is you want to move quickly. Europe figures, hey, we have something great here. They never really liked investors that much to begin with. If you want to move there and pay their high taxes, they'll like you. But, in general, don't wait around when these options are closing down. I've been telling you that for years. I had a friend who got his Italian citizenship about 4 or 5 years ago for his whole family. He wouldn't qualify today, but he gets to keep that passport because he already got it. So take advantage now, whether you qualify for citizenship by descent, whether you want to get a golden visa. There could be potential further changes. Here's another option, naturalization. Ireland and Cyprus, for example, if you speak English, 2 of the easiest and tax-friendliest options possible. Now in Cyprus, they've shortened the naturalization timeline to as little as 3 years if you meet certain criteria, if you're a professional, if you have a certain income. That may be an opportunity for you where you can speak English and get a Cyprus passport in as little as 3 years by actually going and living there. Cyprus, very tax-friendly country, has the British non-dom tax system where basically money not remitted to Cyprus but that's earned overseas isn't taxed in Cyprus. That's a simplified version of what happens. But bottom line, if your business is somewhere else, your investments are somewhere else, generally speaking, the money that you need to live in Cyprus will be taxed. All the other money will be not taxed. And so if you're earning a high income overseas, you don't need as much money to live in Cyprus. You can lower your tax rates often into the single digits. That may be a passport if you meet the criteria in as little as 3 years. And that's not quite as good of a passport as Malta, for example, because they still do not have access to the United States visa-free through the ESTA program. If you don't care about the U.S., you still have all the qualities of having an EU passport all around the world in a country that's always been low tax. Ireland, it is a more progressive country, and so people who are looking for that would benefit from moving to Ireland and spending 5 years where you can apply for naturalization. There is not an exact number of days that they actually follow. There's an exact number of days written, but there is some flexibility perhaps. Ireland has a non-dom tax program. Potentially, some people could literally pay zero in tax for those 5 years, depending on your profile. One other thing you could do is if you'd like the option to live in Europe, you can get a golden visa, keep that in your back pocket, and then get a second passport somewhere else. Not everybody needs a European passport. If you want to live in Europe, you could go and get one of these elective residence permits that generally don't require an investment. They just require you to show income. So everyone from Portugal to Austria to Italy has programs like this. Other countries have programs just for retirees like Greece. And so you don't have to invest hundreds of thousands of euros if you actually want to live in the country in many cases. So there's two different ways to go if you just want to live in Europe. Now, if you do live in the country, or if you get the Portugal Golden Visa and you bide your time, you can get citizenship. But not everybody needs a European passport. The question is, do I want to travel as a European? If you live there, you have many of the same benefits. Now, citizenship certainly brings a level of permanence, but what I would talk to someone about is, what if we took a more affordable route of getting two other citizenship by investment programs, let's say something in the Caribbean, something in Turkey, or maybe you qualify for some citizenship somewhere else. What if we got two non-European citizenships, took all the money we saved and put that into a residence permit, either a golden visa where we're going to get that money back hopefully at some point, or we just show income and we get an elective residence permit. You're going to come out having spent a lot less money to accomplish the same result. Someone else might say, you know what, too many changes in Europe. I don't feel welcome. I'm not going to go there. Bottom line is, those are the main options that I see, from $10 million all the way down to, hey, just showing your income. You don't really have to invest much at all. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We can help you make sense of all of it. One of the things that I've told people for years is my objective is spend as little as possible to get the result. I'm not saying spend as little as possible, but if you don't need the European Union citizenship for 5 or 6 years, maybe you don't have to spend $1 million. There are other options for people who want to make donations or who want to start big businesses. If you're going to do that anyway, great, claim a citizenship. But if you're going to engage in inorganic behavior, maybe it's better just to invest a lot less and just bide your time. Maybe you do want to spend, a couple $1 million. Bottom line is there's options for everybody. We'd be happy to help you with it. The end of an era with Malta's citizenship program ending, but it's not the end of the world because there's plenty of other options depending on your circumstances and depending on how much you really need Europe.
This is an 18th century palace in Lisbon, Portugal, and it's literally one of the most elegant fine dining restaurants anywhere in Europe. And I'm going to be showing you luxury living in Portugal here, and showing you penthouses and palaces for sale that you can live in with some of the best views of the city. And taking you to an exclusive members club that you can join, where old money and new money meet here in Lisbon. We're shopping for top brands along Lisbon's 5th Avenue, visiting a catamaran in Lisbon's harbor to show you how you can buy a boat here, and meeting Michelin star chefs and drinking amazing Portuguese wine to show you the good life in Lisbon. This is how to live like a king.